You ever notice how the moment you start growing, the enemy starts sending distractions with your name on them? Oh, I'm talking to somebody tonight. You finally found your peace, and here comes that text. You finally set your boundaries, and here comes somebody testing them. You finally said, I'm done entertaining nonsense, and suddenly nonsense has a VIP ticket to your front row. But let me tell you something, you can't live free if you're always flinching at foolishness. See, God doesn't just want to elevate you. He wants to train you to strengthen your spirit so that every storm doesn't shake you, every opinion doesn't move you, and every lie doesn't need your response. Being unbothered isn't arrogance, it's alignment. It's when you've been through enough battles to realize that your peace is your power, and you refuse to hand it over for anything less than purpose. So tonight, we're not just talking about ignoring drama, we're talking about mastering your atmosphere. Because when you learn to be unbothered, baby, you become unstoppable. Peace is one of the most valuable possessions you will ever have, yet it's the one thing people give away the easiest. You hand it over when someone disrespects you and you let anger take the wheel. You hand it over when you let anxiety narrate your future. You hand it over every time you let someone else's opinion redefine your worth. But peace, true God-given peace, is something you stumble into. It's something you protect. It's not weak, it's not passive, and it's definitely not quiet compliance. It's spiritual maturity. It's saying, I refuse to let chaos rent space in my mind. Protecting your peace means realizing that not every battle deserves your sword, and not every invitation requires your attendance. There comes a point in your growth where you recognize that peace is a full-time job. You don't just keep it by meditating or praying once in a while. You keep it by filtering what enters your life, the conversations you engage in, the energy you allow, the people you confide in. All of it either protects your peace or pollutes it. Some of us keep praying for peace while still entertaining the very environments that rob it. You can't pray for calm and keep feeding your chaos. Protecting your peace means setting boundaries that feel uncomfortable at first, but are necessary for your survival. Because every time you say yes to something that drains you, you say no to the strength you need for your purpose. Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the discipline to not let the noise move you. There's always going to be something trying to steal it, a rumor, a disappointment, a delay, a betrayal. But peace doesn't mean pretending everything's fine. It means standing firm when everything isn't. It's when the storm rages, but you still sleep in the boat because you know who's on board with you. Protecting your peace is learning to operate from a posture of trust, not control. You can't have peace if you're always trying to fix what only God can handle. Control is heavy, peace is light. When you stop trying to control outcomes, people, and timing, you make room for peace to settle in. Sometimes protecting your peace means walking away from what you once begged for. It means accepting that not everyone can go with you, not because they're bad, but because your peace costs more than their comfort. There are people who thrive off your chaos because your peace makes them confront their own lack of it. That's why you have to stop explaining your calm to people who prefer confusion. You owe no one access to your spirit just because they've had access to your past. When God starts healing you, he'll also start separating you. And the separation is never about arrogance, it's about preservation. You can't build a sanctuary around your soul if you keep letting toxic energy through the front door. Protecting your peace looks like choosing silence over proving a point. It looks like choosing prayer over panic. It looks like responding with grace when your ego wants revenge. It's not glamorous. Sometimes it feels lonely because peace requires stillness, and stillness will often expose what busyness used to hide. You'll start to realize how much of your life was noise disguised as necessity. And that's when you learn Peace is expensive because it demands transformation. It requires you to unlearn the need to always be right, to always be seen, to always be included. When your peace is real, you no longer chase validation, you carry conviction. You have to train your spirit to detect what disturbs your peace early. Don't wait until you're burned out, bitter, or broken to notice the signs. The moment something starts making you shrink, question your worth, or lose sleep, that's your cue to protect your peace. That's not selfish, that's stewardship. God gave you peace as a promise, not as a luxury. My peace I give to you, he said, not the world's kind, not temporary calm, but divine stillness that lives beneath the chaos. But it's your responsibility to guard it. You can't keep opening the gate and then crying about the wolves. Sometimes the hardest part about protecting your peace is not reacting when you know you could. You could clap back, you could expose, you could set the record straight, but peace whispers, let it go. Because every time you choose reaction over restraint, you forfeit your spiritual power. People who are led by peace don't need to prove their point. They let time and truth do the talking. When your peace is protected, you don't get easily offended. You start to see things differently. You recognize that some people are projecting, some problems are passing, and some pain is part of your pruning. You stop fighting battles beneath your anointing. Protecting your peace also means managing your environment. There are rooms where your peace will suffocate because the air is filled with competition, comparison, and complaint. You can't breathe purpose in contaminated spaces. Learn to exit quietly. Every time you choose to stay where your spirit feels uneasy, you're teaching your peace to tolerate chaos. And peace that tolerates chaos isn't peace, it's exhaustion in disguise. You need to discern when your assignment in a space has expired, because the longer you stay, the more you'll lose sight of yourself. Peace requires you to walk away gracefully, not bitterly. You don't have to burn bridges. Just stop crossing the ones that lead you back to confusion. Protecting your peace is also about what you let replay in your mind. Some of you have peace, but your thoughts won't let you rest. You keep rehearsing what went wrong, who hurt you, what they said, what you could have done differently. But peace doesn't live in replay, it lives in release. You can't have peace if your mind is stuck in yesterday's pain. You've got to learn how to evict the thoughts that no longer serve your healing. That's why scripture says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Transformation is mental before it's visible. Protecting your peace means protecting your thought life. Not every thought deserves your agreement. You've got to challenge the ones that bring anxiety, doubt, or fear, because they are enemies of your peace. When you start to value peace, you also start to value pace. You realize not every opportunity is divine timing. Some of us lose peace because we're rushing what God meant to reveal slowly. Peace allows you to rest while you wait. It's knowing that delay isn't denial, it's development. Peace teaches patience. It teaches surrender. It teaches trust. You begin to understand that if God hasn't opened the door yet, it's because he's still preparing you to walk through it. Protecting your peace means refusing to panic while you're in process. And here's the truth, peace doesn't always look powerful. Sometimes it looks like silence when you want to scream. Sometimes it looks like choosing joy in uncertainty. Sometimes it looks like minding your business while the world misjudges your motives. But peace has a soundless strength. It grounds you. It keeps you centered. It gives you clarity when emotions would cloud your judgment. You start to realize that the one who guards their peace is always in control, even when nothing else is. So when you protect your peace like it's sacred, you begin to live from a place of divine restraint. You stop chasing what disturbs you. You stop explaining what God is still revealing. You stop allowing temporary people to cause permanent unrest. Because peace is not just a feeling, it's a fortress. It's the mark of someone who's trained, seasoned, and surrendered enough to know that chaos doesn't deserve their energy. And when your peace becomes sacred, nothing and no one can snatch it unless you hand it over. Emotions are powerful, but if you don't master them, they'll master you. You can't be led by your feelings and expect to live by faith at the same time. Feelings are real, yes, but they aren't always true. They fluctuate with your circumstances, they react to your environment, and they shift with your season. One moment you're motivated, the next you're discouraged. One day you feel confident, the next you question everything about yourself. That's why mastering your emotions isn't about suppressing them. It's about stewarding them. It's about understanding that emotions were never meant to drive the car. They're meant to sit in the passenger seat. You acknowledge them, you listen to them, but you don't let them take control of the wheel. When you start maturing spiritually, you realize that not every feeling deserves a response. Some feelings are momentary visitors that show up to test your discipline. Anger shows up to see if you'll let your mouth move before your mind catches up. Fear shows up to see if you'll let it rewrite the script of your faith. Insecurity shows up to see if you'll shrink or stand tall in what God already said about you. Mastering your emotions means learning to pause before you participate. It means taking a breath before reacting, because emotional impulsivity can destroy what spiritual maturity is trying to build. Your emotions are indicators, not dictators. They tell you something about your internal state, but they don't get to tell you who you are. When you feel anger, it might be revealing an area of unhealed hurt. When you feel jealousy, it might be pointing to an unfulfilled purpose. When you feel anxious, it might be exposing a lack of trust. Emotions are teachers if you're willing to sit in the classroom and learn. But most people run from emotional discomfort instead of studying it. They react, they explode, they shut down, and then they wonder why peace keeps slipping away. You can't master what you refuse to face. The truth is, you will never reach your next level if your emotions still control your decisions. God can't trust a person who is ruled by their mood. One day you're on fire for your calling, the next day you're ready to quit because it got hard. 1 minute you're forgiving, the next you're rehearsing offenses like a playlist. You can't be emotionally unstable and spiritually effective. Maturity requires consistency, and consistency requires emotional regulation. Sometimes you'll have to worship while you're hurting, smile when you're misunderstood, and stay focused when everything around you is falling apart. That's not faking, it's faithing. It's saying, I refuse to let how I feel sabotage what I know. When you don't master your emotions, they will manipulate you. They'll make you act out of character, make decisions out of desperation, and attach yourself to things that don't align with your destiny. Unchecked emotions will have you fighting battles you were never called to fight. They'll have you defending yourself when silence would have been your protection. They'll have you reacting to situations that God was using to test your patience. You cannot conquer life if you are constantly conquered by your reactions. Emotional maturity is about being able to feel deeply but respond wisely. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you process it properly. It means you stop using anger as armor and tears as a weakness. It means you learn how to grieve without giving up. Some people never heal because they mistake suppression for strength. They bury their emotions under busyness and then wonder why they feel empty when the noise dies down. Healing requires honesty. You can't fix what you keep pretending doesn't hurt. Emotional mastery starts with emotional awareness. When you can name what you feel, you can start to change how you deal. You have to be intentional about creating space between your emotion and your action. That space is where wisdom lives. That's where growth happens. The immature version of you used to react immediately, but the healed version of you knows how to pause, pray, and proceed. Every time you choose to pause, you weaken the power of your old patterns. because emotions are habitual. They come with triggers. Certain people, places, and memories can reignite old wounds. Mastering your emotions means knowing your triggers and training your response. You might not control how you feel in a moment, but you always control what you do next. God can't elevate someone who throws tantrums every time things don't go their way. You have to be able to handle delay without doubting, correction without crumbling, and pressure without panicking. Emotional mastery is what separates those who talk about purpose from those who walk in it. It's easy to be kind when life is kind to you, but can you still walk in grace when you're overlooked, misunderstood, or mistreated? Emotional maturity is when you stop needing validation to stay consistent. You don't change your character because of someone else's chaos. You stay grounded because you know your stability doesn't come from circumstances, it comes from your source. Sometimes God will allow certain situations to expose how much control your emotions still have over you. That coworker who gets under your skin isn't just annoying, they're an opportunity for growth. That rejection wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every emotional trigger is a test, and until you pass it, you'll keep retaking it. You can't pray for peace while refusing to discipline your emotion. Because peace doesn't come when life stops being messy. Peace comes when you stop being moved by the mess. When you master your emotions, you start to see conflict differently. You realize not every offense needs to be addressed. Some things are beneath your peace. Some arguments are distractions in disguise. Emotional maturity gives you the ability to choose your battles with discernment. You stop reacting to everything and start responding from wisdom. And that's how you maintain power in situations meant to pull you out of character. The enemy doesn't always attack your finances or your family. Sometimes he attacks your feelings. Because if he can control your emotions, he can control your focus. And once your focus is gone, your faith starts to waver. Mastering your emotions also means mastering your self-talk. The loudest voice in your life is the one inside your head. If your emotions are untrained, that voice becomes your worst critic. It magnifies fear, amplifies doubt, and minimizes faith. You start believing every lie your feelings tell you. You're not good enough. You'll never recover. Nobody cares. But when you start taking authority over your emotions, you replace that inner noise with truth. You start speaking life even when you feel low. You start saying, I may feel weak, but I know I'm strong. Because feelings fade, but truth stands. Mastering your emotions also means setting emotional boundaries. You can't let everyone dump their chaos into your spirit and expect to stay balanced. Some people drain you emotionally because they feed off your empathy. You've got to learn to say, I love you, but I can't carry that. Compassion does not require depletion. Protecting your emotional space is an act of stewardship. You can't pour from an empty vessel. You can't heal others while neglecting your own emotional health. Maturity teaches you to pour wisely, not endlessly. When you master your emotions, you also master your energy. You learn that not every situation deserves a reaction, not every comment deserves a reply, and not every disappointment deserves your despair. You begin to recognize that your energy is sacred. You stop letting people dictate how your day goes. You start waking up with intention, not reaction. Because emotional control is spiritual discipline. It's evidence that you trust God enough to stay calm in chaos. It's saying, I don't have to respond to everything because I know who fights for me. Emotional mastery is also about perspective. When you change how you see something, you change how you feel about it. That disappointment wasn't a dead end, it was redirection. That betrayal wasn't the end of your story, it was the birth of boundaries. That delay wasn't rejection, it was protection. Your emotions will lie to you when your perspective is limited. But when your vision is aligned with faith, your emotions have no choice but to follow. You start living by what you know, not by what you feel. Mastering your emotions doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily decision. Every day you wake up and choose discipline over drama. You choose growth over reaction. You choose to respond from peace instead of pain. Some days you'll get it right, some days you won't, but even that awareness is growth because mastery is built in moments. It's the moment you want to lash out, but you stay silent. The moment you feel anxious, but you choose prayer. The moment you feel overwhelmed, but you remind yourself, this too shall pass. Every time you do that, you strengthen your emotional muscle. Eventually, you become unshakable, not because life got easier, but because your emotions stop running the show. You still feel everything, pain, fear, joy, disappointment, but you don't live from it. You live above it. You learn that emotions are messengers, not masters. And when you finally get there, when you can look at a storm and stay still, when you can feel the fire and not burn, when you can be hurt and still love, that's when you know you've truly learned to master your emotions before they master you. Silence is one of the most underestimated weapons you'll ever have. People think silence means weakness, but it's often the loudest declaration of strength. Silence doesn't mean you don't know what to say. It means you've learned when not to say it. It's not about having no voice. It's about having discipline with your voice. There's power in withholding a reaction, especially in a world that constantly pressures you to respond. Because silence isn't empty, it's strategy. It's wisdom wrapped in restraint. It's the decision to conserve your peace instead of wasting it on proving a point that doesn't need to be proven. When you reach a certain level of maturity, you realize not every accusation deserves an answer, not every attack requires a defense, and not every invitation to chaos needs your attendance. Silence becomes your filter. You start recognizing that some people aren't looking for truth, they're looking for reaction. And when you give them your reaction, you give them your control. There's a certain power in letting people wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're praying for. Because the moment you start explaining everything, you give the enemy your blueprint. Some battles are won not by shouting, but by staying still and letting God show what words never could. Silence doesn't mean passivity, it means perspective. You start to see that not every season requires noise. Some of the most powerful transformations happen in quiet places. The caterpillar doesn't announce its cocoon season, yet that's where it becomes what it was meant to be. The seed doesn't make noise underground, but that's where growth happens. Silence is the sacred space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the place where you learn to listen, not to the crowd, not to the critics, but to God's direction. Because you can't hear divine strategy if you're always distracted by human opinions. Sometimes God will intentionally silence your environment so he can speak to your spirit. He'll remove the applause, mute the noise, and isolate you, not to punish you, but to position you. Because silence is where revelation lives. It's where clarity is born. But we've been conditioned to equate silence with absence. We think if people aren't talking, if doors aren't opening, if things aren't happening, that means God isn't working. But the truth is, he often does his best work in silence. You just can't see it yet because he's still shaping it. When you understand that, you stop panicking when things go quiet. You start to realize that silence isn't a setback, it's a setup. There's also power in the silence of self-control. When you choose not to react, not to defend, not to retaliate, you're not being weak, you're being wise. It takes maturity to stay silent when you have every reason to speak. Because silence doesn't mean you don't know the truth. It means you trust that truth doesn't need you to protect it. You've learned that time will expose what you could never explain. People who misunderstand you today will eventually have to witness what God does through you tomorrow. So you stay quiet, not because you can't speak, but because you don't want to waste your voice on temporary noise. Silence also protects your anointing. The enemy thrives on distraction, and nothing distracts faster than unnecessary words. When you talk too much, you reveal too much. You start giving energy to things that don't deserve your focus. Sometimes you need to keep quiet about your dreams until they're ready to be seen. Not everyone around you is rooting for your breakthrough. Some are waiting for your breakdown. Silence gives you room to build without interference. It's the difference between announcing your plans and executing them, because while people are talking, silence is working. There's a reason Jesus often withdrew to solitary places. It wasn't because he was avoiding people. It was because he understood the importance of silence in sustaining purpose. Every great leader, every visionary, every world changer has learned how to manage moments of silence. The noise of life can make you forget who you are. That's why silence is sacred. It recalibrates your soul. It reminds you of your source. It teaches you to stop performing for people and start aligning with purpose, because when you live for applause, you die by rejection. But when you live from peace, silence becomes your safe place. Learning to be silent also means mastering the art of observation. When you stop talking so much, you start noticing what you once ignored. You see people for who they really are. You hear what isn't being said. You discern the motives behind the movements. Silence sharpens your spiritual senses. It gives you insight that words can't access. And sometimes the reason God tells you to stay quiet is because he wants to show you something that your emotions would have blinded you to if you had reacted too quickly. Silence gives you sight. But silence isn't just external, it's internal too. You can be quiet on the outside and still chaotic on the inside. Internal silence is when your mind stops arguing with your spirit. It's when you stop overthinking every outcome, stop rehearsing every hurt, and stop letting anxiety narrate your future. Internal silence comes when you decide to trust that whatever's beyond your control is still under God's command. You can't hear divine direction if your thoughts are always loud with worry. That's why mastering silence is more about calming your inner world than silencing your outer one. Silence also reveals your strength in moments of conflict. Anyone can argue. Anyone can clap back. It takes real power to choose peace when your pride is screaming for attention. The immature need to be heard. The mature know when to be quiet. Because silence doesn't mean surrender, it means strategy. You start to realize that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to justify your boundaries to people who benefit from you having none. You don't have to defend your calling to people who didn't give it to you. Silence is confidence clothed in calm. Some of you have been wasting your energy trying to make people understand you who are committed to misunderstanding you. No matter how many explanations you give, they'll twist it, question it, and use it against you. That's when silence becomes your shield. Let them talk, let them assume, let them spread their stories. The truth has a way of outlasting every lie. When you've got peace, you don't need proof. You let God be your defense attorney and keep your mouth closed. Because the moment you start defending yourself to people who don't want to understand, you lower yourself to their level. Silence also has the power to heal. There are wounds that can't close in noise. Sometimes you need to step away, get still, and let God do surgery on your soul. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's tears no one sees, prayers no one hears, moments of solitude where you finally face what you've been running from. Silence gives you room to breathe. It allows you to reconnect with yourself, to reset your spirit, and to remember that you're not broken. You're becoming. Healing happens in the hush. Silence teaches patience. It trains you to wait for the right time to speak, move, or act. You start realizing that timing is everything, and silence protects you from premature exposure. Sometimes what looks like delay is actually divine preservation. God hides you in silence because he knows you're not ready for the noise that comes with visibility. Everyone wants to be seen. But not everyone can handle being watched. Silence gives you time to develop before you're displayed. It's not denial, it's preparation. There's also a kind of silence that confuses your enemies. They expect your breakdown. They expect your outburst. They expect you to react. But when you respond with silence, it disarms them. They don't know how to handle someone who refuses to engage, because your silence says, I'm not fighting this in the flesh. I'm fighting this in faith. It says you can say what you want, but I won't be moved. That kind of silence is intimidating because it's rooted in confidence, not fear. It's a declaration that your peace is off limits. You start to see that silence is not the absence of voice. It's the presence of control. It's when you choose to guard your words because you understand the power they carry. Every word you speak is a seed, and you refuse to plant anything that doesn't align with your purpose. Silence keeps your garden pure. You don't curse what you're praying for. You don't speak against what you're believing for. You hold your tongue until your words are seasoned with grace. That's power. That's maturity. Silence also helps you discern divine timing in conversations. Not every truth needs to be spoken immediately. Some truths need to be seasoned in silence before they're served in wisdom. Silence gives you the patience to wait for the right moment. Because sometimes the right word at the wrong time can do more harm than good. The wise don't just know what to say, they know when to say it. And that discernment only comes from practicing silence. The beauty of silence is that it builds mystery around your movements. You become unpredictable to those who try to manipulate your emotions. They can't read you because you've learned to stop narrating your every next step. That's why some of your greatest breakthroughs will come when you stop talking about them. You don't have to post it. You don't have to announce it. Just move in silence and let results make the noise. Because silence isn't hiding, it's building. And when you master silence, you realize that the loudest person in the room isn't always the strongest one. The strongest is often the one who can sit in stillness while everyone else is fighting to be heard. The one who can listen without interrupting. The one who can wait without complaining. The one who can trust without seeing. That's what real strength looks like. It's calm, it's steady, it's silent.